Hey everybody, it's Christina Holloway here, and today we're going to talk about personal brand and how we're going to elevate our personal brand for 2022. Let's also talk about how we're going to create an elevated version of ourselves. It's a new year, it's a fresh start, and we do want to figure out how we can show up just a little bit bigger and a little bit bolder and a little bit just more us. So in this video, we're going to talk about 3 questions that we can ask ourselves as we shape our brand for who we are when we show up to work. I prefer to call this your professional persona and not really your personal brand. But either way, what we're really trying to say is, when I show up to work as a professional, how do I want the people around me to interact with me? And how do I want them to see me? What's the one thing I want them to identify when they consider me for projects or for work, or even to just approach me for help? The reason this is important is because the more we tell people how they should see us, the easier it's going to be for them to interact with us. There will be fewer surprises, and there will be a better understanding of how much they can and cannot expect from you. If you're showing up, especially for a new job, or you have a new position or promotion, or you're on a new project, and 1 or 2 people or all of them are new to you, then you have a great opportunity to step in front of any perceptions they might have and tell them, this is the kind of person I am. Here's how I behave when I'm under pressure or I'm facing a deadline. And here's what you can expect from me in terms of my professionalism. How is this going to work? I do have a client who, I have quite a few who like to do this, but this particular client was very clear. And I appreciated his style. On day 1, he showed up and he said, I'm going to tell you right away, I know I'm an introvert. I'm a very strong introvert. He said, I also have tendencies to be a perfectionist, and I have tendencies to be controlling to the point where I know it can hinder progress. I work on it every day. He said, every day I am very careful how I show up. And he said, what's most important to me is making sure people know and understand that if my controlling behavior flares up, that they need a framework or a method or an approach to respond to me and tell me, here's where I feel you've gone a little too far. Now, I worked with him for, I'll say 9 months. I think it was 9 months to a year. And so he told me, I'm going to go back and interview for this other position. It's just going to be more well suited to the type of person I am. He went in there and didn't know anybody. And as an introvert, that was hard for him to introduce himself to total strangers. So at the end, we're finished now. He said, the biggest lesson I learned was that I really needed to step in front of these people I didn't know and explain to them who I was. And here was where there was a difference. He actually did outreach on his own with this team and said, let's get on a call so we can just talk about, expectations for the team. And while he was on the call, he said, I just need to make sure people understand I have a tendency to do these types of things, especially the controlling part. And he said, I may start to get a little too intense and could follow up with you repeatedly throughout the day if I laser in on something. He said, what's going to be most important is that you're just able to tell me, it's okay, I've got it. I can't get it to you right away, but it'll all be fine. He's like, all I need is just a little reassurance and then I can back off. He's like, that's the best way right now that I can control my behavior. And he gave people warning. Now, the thing that he did say also is that he received feedback from his previous team. And he said, I kept following up with this person because I hadn't heard from him. And I explained to him, you really need to let us know if you're not going to be around. I hadn't heard from him all day. And he ended up having to take a couple hours of personal time, which was all fine. But he kind of got attached to this and kept sending him emails. And in the end, this person said, I think it would be great if you could just trust your teammates a little bit more. And he said, I don't know where that came from. And I said, well, in your old position, you leaned into that behavior that can sometimes be problematic. And this person filled in the gaps by saying you have trust issues, right? Now, what he knew was he had a tendency to be controlling. Was it about trust? Yeah, maybe, because we talked about that as well. But he did go into his new team and he explained to them, I can follow up a little too much and get over focused. If you just tell me it's going to be okay, I'll be fine. And they appreciated that. And he then was able to eliminate any assumptions that he didn't trust his team members. In addition, when he had this call, other people on the team said, well, thanks for opening up the conversation that way. I tend to be this kind of leader. I tend to be somebody who does this. If you guys can just be patient with me, you'll see that I like to work collaboratively, but I focus in this area. And everybody took a turn explaining and defining who they are when they show up for work. Now, we're going to answer 3 questions about how you can start to identify, if you haven't already, what kind of person you are when you show up to work. The end of the exercise is not for us to eliminate behaviors that you think could be problematic. I mean, my client could easily have said, help me stop being controlling, in which case that would have been a really tall order. But what he did say is, help me start being able to show up so I don't alienate the people around me. And that's what defining a professional persona or personal brand is really all about. Help me fill in the gaps so people know and understand who they're dealing with and they don't make assumptions about what they think I'm thinking, because nobody really knows what you're thinking. So let's just get into the 3 questions and how we want to start defining who we are when we show up to work so others don't have to guess and can actually understand how they can work with us throughout the day without too many surprises or assumptions that could derail our successes. All right, so let's get started. Number 1, understand who you are and accept that. Now, you probably already have a very clear idea and understanding of exactly what kind of person you are. So let's talk about you. Now, you're going to want to ask yourself, how do you approach the work you're doing? A person who's an extrovert can be very big on contributing in big team meetings, not really encumbered by meeting new people and speaking with strangers, feeling invigorated by that. If you're an introvert, you have a tendency to be more of a thinker, a deeper thinker, somebody who needs to consider all of the options, think really deep and hard about it, and then contribute. You're not going to be a person who gives ideas on the fly. So if you really want to show up to meetings and say, hey, I need a coach who's going to help me come up with ideas on the fly, you're going to struggle with that. It's just not innately your strength. And another one is, are you a person who likes to brainstorm with big brainstorming sessions, or are you a person who likes to solve ideas, come up with stuff by yourself, and then bring it forward in a team meeting? If you have different approaches, it's good for you to start identifying, I'm this kind of person. I can contribute to either one, but I'm going to be in my moment or in my strength if I'm contributing this way. Another one is how you give presentations. Do you need a lot of time to prepare? Do you need to practice a lot? Most people who are young and nervous, who haven't done it often, they need a lot of time to prepare. They need outlines. They need all their notes before they can just come up and speak. And other people who are quite seasoned, who've been asked to present all the time, have developed a methodology that allows them to show up strong no matter what the content is. This is going to be a little bit of a learned skill, but there are people who just don't like speaking in front of groups. You have to identify if you're that person and what methodology you're going to use. Another example could be your learning style. Are you a person who's going to benefit from shadowing somebody? I just talked to somebody today who said, I already know what my learning style is. I'm better off if I shadow a colleague and they teach me on the scene how I'm supposed to solve a problem versus them giving me a workbook and telling me go back and do some case studies and practice or go work with an instructor and then come back and try to apply it. You have to understand where you are and how you're going to thrive in that area. But you're going to start realizing what your collection of strengths really is. And this is more about determining what kind of personality you really are. So if I decided that I'm this type of personality, I absolutely will show up at meetings and say, hi, I'm Christina. My strengths are that I show up and drive progress forward. I am a person who loves big picture ideas. I love brainstorming, and I love being on all of these projects. I don't need to tell everybody every moment in every meeting that this is who I am. However, if I run into a meeting, let's say I am an introvert and I run into a meeting where I'm working with somebody and they say, well, let's just going to have a big brainstorm and why don't we all go around and share stories about ourselves or share experiences that we've had, or why don't you just tell us what you've been thinking of the past 5 minutes and we'll just write it all on a whiteboard. If you get to me and I'm an introvert, I'm not going to have a whole lot to say. I'm going to say, well, I really wasn't able to come up with something, and you'll feel like you failed. Your answer can be, for example, well, as an introvert, this really isn't my wheelhouse. I usually go back and come up with solutions and then come back and bring them forward after I've had time to think about it. But since we're doing this brainstorming session where we're all contributing, the best I have is, did you consider, doing it in this direction, right? So you might come up with something small, but you do get to quantify who you are and how you showed up and why this type of situation isn't going to be the best use of your talent. Say it any way you like. Don't say it if you don't feel comfortable or you think someone's going to overreact to it. Our intention really isn't to put people on the defensive. It's just to start defining, especially if you're in a new job or a new space. This is a little bit about how I operate. Doesn't mean I can't cooperate with you, just means that I'm not going to be contributing in a really strong way right out of the gate. This leads me to number 2, help other people understand your strengths, right? So this type of answer really shows us, I am this type of person. I benefit most when I define for you who I am, and I'm going to show up to work and just let you know where I'm navigating in my strengths. You very well could be told, well, we're going to do a brainstorming session. You would have to all go back and come up with some ideas and bring back 5 ideas. And if you're a person who thinks that way, you'll say, this is going to be great. And you'll be able to go in and really strong. And you can even say while you're there, I loved this exercise. I've done this before. Walked right into a meeting where I felt really engaged and excited for my contributions and said, I loved this exercise. I felt that this was really great use of my time. Here are all my contributions, and I can't wait to get started. So you always set the tone and the expectation for who you are and what you really enjoy doing. And you're letting other people know, this was a great exercise. This was a great use of my time. This was a great way for me to show you where I have my best work. Who else are we talking to? Your boss, your supervisor, and explaining, they hired you. They knew where you had great strengths and great wins, and they knew what talent you had that they were going to have you come aboard and shine in this role. You now want to be able to say to them, here's where I love doing this type of work, and here's where I'm going to have to continue working until I find a good solution. You're just letting people know all the time, opening your mouth and saying, here's where I'm doing great work. Here's where I feel a little challenged. I'm going to need some additional help. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to explain to people that you're this type of person, and this is why you're going to be successful in one area and not so much in another area. And you're going to ask for patience and kindness. My client opened the door by doing something that was really hard for him, which was to have a meeting with total strangers and explain to them who he was and tell them, these are the parts that I struggle with about me. If you just have patience, here's where we're going to be successful. He also felt very comfortable talking to these people because he told me, I don't like those meetings where they ask you, can you share one thing about it? And we go in a big round circle and everybody shares. He said, that's awful and it feels terrible. And I don't have anything personal that I want to share with anybody because I'm a private person. However, he did want to work with his elite exclusive team of people that he knew he was going to have to work with on a regular basis and explain to them immediately, here's the kind of person I am and here's how I'm going to contribute to the team. This is all about defining your professional brand or your professional persona and explaining to people, if you're going to get the best out of me, here's where I want to operate and I'm going to do great work. And here's where you have to be a little patient with me as I get more comfortable in this group. And number 3, fill in the gaps between what you know to be true and what others are just assuming about you. What do we mean by this? There is a moment where you'll be at work and somebody who is a little clueless and doesn't know will walk right up to you and say, you're that one who, you're the quiet one who has great ideas, right? Someone told me to come over and talk to you. My favorite was this boss who said interns were intimidated by him and that they said, oh, he's the demanding one. Don't go and ask him questions unless you really know what you're talking about, right? So there's an aura or a persona that people start to fill in the blanks. And they'll say, she's the aloof one. He's the really demanding one. That's the person who has extremely high expectations. Don't go over there and ask unless you have everything put together. And here's the person who's an introvert but really highly driven. And here's the one who tends to be a little controlling. If you're going to get involved with him, he's going to send you a lot of emails, so you have to do things exactly the way he wants them done. Your behavior is going to show up in front of other people before you realize it. Before you can catch up to that, people are going to get an idea of who you are based on how you behave. And how you behave is also related to how you respond to certain situations and certain problems, certain questions, and certain conversations. So, if you start to find that in the first few weeks or the first few months that you're getting a little bit of a reputation, that's not bad. It doesn't have to be a bad reputation. It just means you're developing a reputation. Hey, if you have really tough questions, ask her. She's the one who's going to know all the answers. Again, we're starting to figure out how people are filling in the blanks about who they think you are. Now, you may like that. You may like that people say, oh, that's the one with the highest expectations who can't be bothered unless you really have your act together. That's okay. You also want to explain, I've never really positioned myself as someone who's not collaborative or doesn't want to answer questions. So tell me more about a situation or a circumstance where you felt you couldn't come to me or ask me or have a conversation with me. Well, usually it's because you end all the calls and you defer everything over to your assistant, or you just end the calls early, or you don't open up for any questions and you're always on the phone and none of us can really get to you, and you don't respond to messages or you don't respond to email. So I just had the impression that you were very busy, that you had very high standards, and that you couldn't be bothered with a lot of the details. Okay, so at least now I know where you got that idea. And how now I know where my behavior, where I was really focused on myself and getting my work done, had an impact on the people around me who might have benefited from having a conversation with me. So we now have a moment where we can help people understand, well, if I gave you that impression, that wasn't my intention. Let's find a way that we can communicate, especially if you really need something from me. If you're new in a position and you're still trying to get to know people, you absolutely do not want to come up with a persona of, I can't be bothered. It's really just not in your best interest. All right, so that's it for this video on how to up-level your personal brand or your professional persona for 2022. What we did was identify who we are and what our strengths are, make sure we understand how to educate others around us about what our strengths really look like, and then take time to figure out where others are filling in the gaps of who they're trying to assume we are versus who we really are. And if there's a problem, trying to bridge that gap. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.